welcome to Meet the Biz. Today I'm really excited because we have a composer here today. This is like when you grow up and you hear that music, when you turn on the television, and every show that you love is like written by the same composer. And he is here today, Mr. Charles Fox. Mr. Charles Fox. Hello, Charles.
I'm laughing right off the bat. How are you? Great to be with you, David.
Oh, thank you. And our pleasure. And we have somebody else here today that we all know, Alexander Tovar from Performing Arts Studio West, composer, teacher, director. So I was going over, you know, your website is gorgeous. And here's just to name a few. Happy Days, Wonder Woman, Love American Style, Laverne and Shirley, The Love Boat. You know, I could keep on going. I mean, it's artists like you that keep your music flowing through our veins throughout our life.
Oh, thank you very much for saying that's very nice of you. You know, it's I've been doing this for a long time, and the very first show that I did on television was Wide World of Sports in 1965, and they didn't know if even an anthology of sports events would even take hold. And 35 years later, it was still on the air, my theme. But a couple of years after that, they decided, it was ABC, to put Monday night, making the Monday night a night of football.
Right.
So I did that original Monday Night Football theme, and it's just kept going over the years, and I thought all these great experiences. By the way, some of them did, you know, they didn't all last on the air. Obviously, a lot of them were pilots that didn't go, or sometimes I did a Bob Mission series, and they pulled that off the air and called The Family for Joe. They pulled that off the air in 6 episodes with no audience. So, you know, you never know. But I've been very fortunate to have some of those really long-running shows that people love and have grown up with. I keep hearing, so that's very nice.
Oh, well, it's so true. I mean, when did you know you wanted to be involved with the art of music as a composer?
Well, I started taking piano lessons when I was quite young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, and I went to a great high school in New York, the High School of Music and Art, and I was very influenced by all the activities, the fantastic musicians. I got into jazz. I got into Latin music. My earliest music was Latin music, honestly. My earliest songs were all in Spanish, which I don't even speak, but I had a great affinity for the music. I got into opera and classical music. I used to go to the Metropolitan Opera at least once a week or twice a week. I had an orchestration teacher then who suggested that to get, if I got close to an orchestra and see violin players, you know, bowing, and horn players, and listen to the sound of a clarinet with a flute together, make mental notes, you know. So those days, the Metropolitan Opera, the old wonderful Metropolitan Opera on 37th Street, had a standing room all around the whole rear to the side of the orchestra section. I used to stand right behind the double basses, and I'd go there at least once or twice a week just to hear music and live, and I would stand, you know, and it was $2, by the way, to do that.
Wow.
So the really best thing that ever happened to me musically in my life that I take with me to this day, when I was 18 years old, I had the great good fortune to go to Paris and to study with Nadia Boulanger.
I was going to ask you about that because we did a class, or I did a class for the program on Nadia Boulanger, and I was looking that you had the opportunity. That just must have been a wonder. It was such a great class for me to research it when I saw that you studied with her. It's just, I'd love to hear a little bit about that. I mean,
she was an extraordinary musician. Extraordinary. Yeah. I was very much in love with her, and I am to this day. She gave me a whole life of music. I went there when I was 18 years old, just for the summer. There was a conservatory in the Palace of Fontainebleau, and there were just a few of us composers. And so the day I had my very first lesson with her, I would tell you it was the day that I knew that I would spend my whole life composing music. She was that inspiring to me. Of course, I wrote music I composed before that and had pieces in high school, and I wrote songs, but I wrote mostly little classical pieces.
Hmm.
But that was the moment and the time then I realized that this was going to be my life's work. And I ended up spending 2 years in Paris with her, and I saw her almost every day for class lessons, and
Wow.
she influenced my life. And as I say, to this day, she sits right here on my shoulder, looking over me.
She was strict, right?
Well,
Or
she was strict. She was funny. She was charming. I mean, honestly, I'd sit next to her at the piano bench.
uh-huh.
If she didn't like something, she'd give me a whack like this with the elbow, and I could sometimes get knocked right off
Wow.
the chair. So I don't know if you call that strict.
Uh-huh.
Right. But you had a few black and blue marks on the side.
And I wasn't the only one, you know. But I mean, she taught Aaron Copland, you know, 40
Yeah.
years before me. And generations of composers came to her from around the world, including Quincy Jones at one point. And Quincy and I, when we get together, we talk about our beloved teacher. And yeah, it was a very special time in my life. And
Wow.
I kept in touch with her when I left, and I would visit her sometimes. And every time I was back in Paris, which was pretty often actually, I used to record, for example, I mentioned Wide World of Sports. I recorded that in London. And so whenever I was in London, I would come over to Paris just to see her. And if I couldn't even see her because she was busy teaching from 8 in the morning till 11 at night or something, there was a little flower shop downstairs. And I'd always bring her flowers.
Oh, that's sweet.
Just to let her know that I was here. And
That's gorgeous.
anyway, so it was quite an extraordinary experience for me.
Wow. And then you after Paris, you came back to the States.
Came back to the States and got back into playing Latin music, which I had started. And I got to play with some of the great bands like Ray Barretto and Tito Puente and Joe Quijano, and I wrote for those bands. And you know, I got a lot of opportunities along the way from different people. Robert Russell Bennett, the great orchestrator,
Yeah.
had studied. Richard Rodgers had studied with the Boulanger 40 years before me. And I called him out of the blue, and he agreed to see me. And I wrote some music just for him to see what I was capable of. And he recommended me to Skitch Henderson, who then became the musical director of The Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm.
So I started writing music for The Tonight Show and arrangements for Skitch. And, you know, one thing led to another. And I got my first film opportunity. Well, I did a lot of documentaries, a lot of short subjects in New York for the USIA, for, you know, U.S. Information Agency. And I did one for the World's Fair, for the Kodak exhibit in 1964, I think. I also studied electronic music at Columbia University this is well before the synthesizer was invented.
Yeah.
And I bought one of the first synthesizers from Robert Moog.
Wow.
Directly from him, and I got into that in the mid '60s. I got into electronic music, so that was all, you know, part of my life and my career. I did my first picture. It was called The Incident. It was a black and white film with my very dear friend Larry Pierce, who directed it. And then right after that, I did the movie Barbarella.
Yes.
Which was turned out to be a big success. And I did that with Bob Crew, who was one of the rock and roll geniuses of the period. Wrote, if you saw Jersey Boys, those are his songs. And he discovered the Four Seasons.
Oh, okay.
So he gave me these great opportunities. And we ended up doing the Barbarella score together. We wrote songs. And then Larry Pierce's next picture was Goodbye Columbus, Paramount. And the people at Paramount came to see me because they didn't know who this young fellow was scoring Barbarella. It was a big picture. And so that was my kind of entree. Then Stanley Jaffe, who became the head of Paramount Pictures, he was a producer. He brought me to California to do Goodbye Columbus.
Right.
The end of this little episode, I'm telling you, after I finished Goodbye Columbus, Paramount said, we have a pilot for a new series we think you'd be perfect for, called Love American Style.
Yes. Which you got the best song and best score, right?
Did win a couple Emmys, yeah. Anyway, so that was my whole entree to Hollywood, and that's how it happened. And actually, after a year of working in Love American Style, I used to go back and forth to New York commuting. And along the way, I had done other series. There was an afternoon Marty Kraft show called The Bugaloos.
Yeah.
I did that at the same time, Love American Style. And I did a movie called The Puffer Stuff. It was a big Universal picture. And I wrote a bunch of songs for that. Anyway, with that, they pulled me out. They said, I can't commute anymore. I've got to be living in California. So
Right.
it was a real easy decision for me. My work was here anyway.
Right.
That was 1970, so we've been here ever since.
1970.
Yeah.
And I mean, the movies that throughout your career, you have done so many amazing films. And in fact, I have to show, and this is jumping a bit, but this was one of my favorite scores of all time.
Oh, that's nice that you have that. Thank you.
I love that. What a classic.
I was listening to this, earlier today, and just the chords of it, and I was starting to tear up to it.
Oh, that's fun.
Because I grew up, see, I'm starting to now. I grew up listening to that, and I don't know I guess it's my childhood, and I remember seeing this movie and loving it, and playing this album all the time. I don't know if I'm too emotional, but I play that. I used to make cassette tapes. I had a soundtrack collection, and I would play it over and over driving in the car.
I love hearing that. I really do. It's funny. I never go back to see my movies. Once I finish, I move on.
Really?
But just about a week ago, I'll just tell you this, that there's a film company in Australia doing a documentary on 9 to 5.
Yes.
Which is the other movie of Colin Higgins that I did. And so I've been in touch with him. The editor of that picture was a fellow named Nicholas Eliopoulos. He also edited the Foul Play. So just the other day, I got a text from him. Foul Play is on the Turner Network in 15 minutes if you're home watching.
Oh, wow.
I didn't get that until about 15 after.
Right.
And, these days we're all home a lot,
Yeah.
Still working, of course, but we're all home a lot. So I said to my wife, you want to see Foul Play? So we watched not the first 15 minutes, but everything after that. It was fun again. As I say, I just don't really go back. Of course, Barry Manilow had a big hit record, with my song for the
Yeah.
So that I hear, and Barry's been great.
Yeah.
But last night we had my daughter and grandchildren came up from San Diego, and I said, guys, you'd really enjoy watching European Vacation. That was another picture that I did. Anyway, I was so wrong about that because, my grandkids are 13 and twins are 11.
Yeah.
There were scenes in that had I known that I remembered, the rest. And
It's like, cover your eyes.
it was too late. It was too late to cover their eyes. So, what did they hear and what did they see? It was still fun. They laughed a lot. But then at the very end, I saw that Nicholas Eliopoulos also worked on that film. So I have to call him and just tell him that we've made that connection, But anyway, they're doing he is making a documentary now about Colin Higgins. And Colin Higgins, he died at a way too young age.
Yeah.
I made some wonderful pictures, and I had the pleasure of doing some of those pictures with him, including Foul Play 9 to 5.
I have a couple. I wonder if it's the same documentary. The Lane twins are doing a documentary on 9 to 5.
Well, I don't know. Well, there's a producer in Australia.
Okay.
And she's been in touch with me, and so maybe it's a film that I don't know. I really don't.
Right.
She may be working with them. I really don't know. I only know this this one woman, Camille, who's a producer.
For soundtracks, what is your advice to those students who would like to start composing soundtracks or even music?
Well, I've heard people say when it comes down to scoring films, these days everyone has synthesizers, everyone has the ability to make music and hear it, and there's the sound of strings, everything's pretty good these days. Some of it's great. My best advice is to learn to be a musician. Learn to be a musician. Learn to know what makes music. Because as a film composer, you not only have to work within the confines of that particular film, you have to know a lot of, well, first of all, orchestration. So you have to know about instruments. You also need to have a foundation to build musical scenes. You're working for timings. You're working for moments that happen and go to something else. So you have to be very agile in terms of the compositional developmental abilities. And I think it all starts with learning to be a musician. You know, Debussy, for example, used to, he's one of the greatest composers, obviously, but he referred himself as a musician.
Mm.
When you went through the Conservatoire in Paris,
Mm-hmm.
you became a musician. And so there's harmony, there's counterpoint, there's all those things to learn. Now, when you have a keyboard setup and you can get into it, and these days someone can take your information and turn it into music, that's another way to go too, and people do. But if you're asking me to give some young person advice, if you want to be a musician, if you want to be a composer, learn the craft of music, and it's all there. It's not anything hidden. You know,
Yeah.
all the great composers came before us. You know, we're all riding on the shoulders of the Beethovens and Bachs and Mozarts, and of course, in the great songwriters of the century, and the great filmmakers of the Henry Mancinis and, you know, and Jerry Goldsmiths and John Williams. There's an awful lot to learn by these. You basically have to study the past to go to the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
is my long-winded answer to you about anyone getting started. Learn first to become a musician and expand on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you were talking about Barry Manilow, but I mean, Sarah Vaughan has recorded your songs. Olivia Newton-John, Luther Vandross, Carly Simon, Johnny Mathis, Shirley Bassey. I could go on. Sergio Mendes.
Wow.
In fact, I got my album collection out now.
Oh, Roberta, okay.
Oh my gosh, what a great.
Mm-hmm.
Killing Me Softly, which you did so many times with your song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had an awful lot. We had maybe 2,000 different artists record that song, and over the years, and every time I turn around, people are sending me new records of that. So very fortunately, it's in the younger ears as well as people who've been around, you know, and we keep getting new recordings.
Right.
Sarah Vaughan was a particular pleasure for me. She sang not that song. She sang a song called "And the Feeling's Good," which Roberta Flack also recorded, by the way.
Yeah.
But I was in the studio watching Sarah Vaughan sing my song, and that was
Wow.
a great thrill. But I wrote a song for Fred Astaire, and I worked with Fred Astaire. I used to go to his house and rehearse with him, and he recorded a song for film that I wrote with Norman Gimbel, my longtime collaborator who passed away last year. Although I had the good fortune to work with so many of the greatest lyricists, you know. Norman and I had a real collaboration for many years, but I had a real collaboration with Hal David. We wrote many songs together. We did 2 musicals together, actually.
Wow.
But you know, Paul Williams, one of the greatest lyricists, and Sammy Kahn, and actually now I'm doing a show with Alain Boublil, who wrote Les Miserables.
Oh,
We have a new musical we're working on together.
this is wonderful.
So I've been very fortunate to get to work with some of those really.
And the
really great
Bergmans and
the Bergmans. I work with Marilyn Allen, yeah, and Carly Simon, and work with Seals and Crofts, you know, and it's been a great ride, and I'm still riding.
yes, I love it. A question about Killing Me Softly. How, let's say, for example, that song that we all know, how did you get into the emotional connection to it as a composer?
You know, many of the songs I wrote with Norman Gimbel, he wrote the lyrics first.
Yeah.
Actually, truth be told, I prefer to work to lyrics. Sometimes it depends on who I'm writing with. I'll write the melody first, and sometimes I'll grasp it from the lyric. And Norman and I sat around the piano, and he had a notebook of song titles, song ideas, and one of the titles he had in his notebook was "Killing Me Softly with His Blues." He
Mm.
found that in a book that someone gave him, and he liked it, and he jotted it down. So he said, "What do you think about that?" And blues sounded like an old-fashioned word, even 1972 when he wrote the song.
Mm.
So he thought for a second, "What if I kill me softly with a song?" And we talked about what that would be. Most people get affected by hearing a song. A lot of people take the songs through their lives with them. They say, "This is my song," this is our song. We fell in love together, or the tragic stories, or stories of loss, or whatever.
Got married.
Songs are a wonderful poetic medium that go on for 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and people take them with them for their whole life. So this was a song about that. What does it mean to hear a song? What does it mean to you, and how do you get moved by it? So he went home. He called me in a couple hours and gave me a lyric, and I took down the lyric while I was on the phone with him, and in a half an hour I must have written that song. It's just,
Oh, wow. Really? That fast?
yeah,
That's great.
it came right out. And sometimes I can work for weeks, by the way, sometimes it takes me weeks to get just the right setting, the right notes. I know it's always hard to know when you're finished,
Hmm.
I know I'm finished when I want to play the song again. And I know if I'm so bored, I can't wait to get to the end of it, I'm not in the right track.
Oh, wow.
The notes keep coming. The notes never stop. So it's a question of what I'm trying to say. And it's also about character. It's very oftentimes I've written songs for movies and television, particular singers. So you have a voice in your ear, you have a sound, or a motivation because it's a book song. I've written, a number of musicals. So we're dealing with characters within the story, and they have voices. They have voices and characters that you try to live into that character based on the words you get, or even without words, just to start with the melody. I actually believe that when a song is really written correctly between a lyricist and a composer, or one person, or 3 people, that you can't break them apart. When you hear the melody, you hear the lyric, and you
Mhm.
read the lyric, you hear the song. Each one gives you the other part of it. It's just it becomes a united effort, and that's how I think when you have a song that works.
Mhm.
It's really listening to you. It's really like, in a way, giving birth. You need 2 people in a way. You don't need 2 people, but it's that collaboration that creates.
Yeah. That's true.
Mhm.
Although it's Cole Porter that said he never understood why it takes 2 people to write one song.
Yeah, that's right. He wrote lyrics too. Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you ever write lyrics? Was that something you were ever interested in, or?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you that I wrote one song when my daughter was married. I wrote a song for her with my name.
Oh, that's
Yes,
sweet.
and Paul Williams came into my house and he made it better.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
No, I don't. It's not something that I even have an interest in doing.
Uh-huh.
As I say, I've worked with some of the greatest, and they're great, and they're great for a reason. Real poets,
Right.
and really understand the rhythms of speech and song. And so no, I don't aspire to that. What I am, though, I'm a good bouncing board off a lyricist,
Mhm.
good editor. Sometimes I will get just 4 lines of a song, and sometimes it doesn't quite scan the way I hear it, and so we go back. It's called collaboration.
Mhm.
And I may write something, the lyricist may say, "Could we do this instead of that?" And it has to be an open door between people. But I write really with one person. I don't write. The groups now, I know they get into a room together, and 4 or 5 people, they write a song, and it's not what I do. It's too many.
You kind of
people.
work it out yourself first.
It's too many people in a room for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, some publishing companies have tried to put me together in a room to write with someone. It's just not what I do. I need my own alone time.
Yeah.
I need to discover all the wrong notes and to know what really works for me. And if I have tried it in a room where, you just come up with an idea and the lyricist comes up with an idea. It's just not how it works. I need the time alone to see, do I really like it? What can happen is I can play something and someone can say, "Oh, I really like that." So I start to develop something. I don't know if I like it.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the point of developing it, you know? But it really also depends who I'm working with and what we're trying to write for, you know. We had a wonderful evening one night at Jerry Goldsmith's house.
Mhm.
Jerry and his wife Carol, of course Jerry passed away a number of years ago,
Yeah.
tragically, one of the great losses from the music world. But Jerry was a dear friend. And we'd have these musical soirees at his house pretty often. He had 2 grand pianos in his living room. And then with other composers, we would read through classical music, just 8 hands, you know, 2 people at a piano. And we had great musical evenings. One night, Carole King was there for dinner, and filled with Phil Alden Robinson at that time. And we started talking about writing songs and collaborating. And she was more used. Carol had just come back from collaborating with a number of different writers in France. And she said she wrote a number of songs. And Jerry said to her, I don't see how you can do that. I need my alone time as I do. I said, well, I'm maybe a little more used to working with someone, but no, I too need, she said, oh, come on, the 3 of us could write a song in a second. So in a second, we go into the living room. And Carol says, you sit here, you sit there. And she asked me to come up with an idea, and I came up with a little idea for a song. And then Jerry picked up on it, and then Carol scooted over on the piano bench, and she started to sing some words, and our wife Joan and Carol Goldsmith and Phil Alden Robinson all started shouting lyrical thoughts. You know?
Wow.
It was a community sing-along. And after a while, we ended up with a half of a pretty good song, actually.
Wow.
But then we had to go. My wife Joan said, as we're heading into the living room, she said, "This is our last note. Our last night out. Charlie has to get into a project." So Carol said, "Last night out, great title for a song." So we started to write a song called. So we left that song dangling in space, and it was good. We had a great fun time doing it, but we had a half a song we left in the air.
Oh, I love it.
Great.
Yeah,
You were talking about, you mentioned your wife, Joan, and I also read on your website that she is a major part of your music.
well, we've been married a long time, you know, and she's been there with me and for me way before anyone knew I wrote music, you know.
Yeah.
So yes, I always say Joan is there with me for all she's a part of all the music I've ever written. That's true.
Mm.
And actually, when we were married, we went to France, and I wanted her to meet my teacher. That was important for me. So we went, and so she got to meet my beloved teacher, and so now she carries that experience with her too, having met her and known her. And you didn't forget Nadia Boulanger. She was a large, looming, beautiful person that you just never forgot. Yeah.
Well, I know we talked about maybe seeing your studio.
I'd be happy to. So I'm set up over there.
Okay.
And let me see if I make this work. I'm going to shut the sound off here.
Okay.
And then I can go to my machine there. And if you'd like, I will play something for you at the piano, and then walk around the room and show you something of that if you'd like to do that.
I'd love it.
Sounds great.
So let me shut this off here. How do I do
Alrighty.
that? Okay, stop. I'm going to mute.
No, can't hear you. Gonna go over there.
This is so much fun.